너무 힘들었어요. 정말 보고 싶었어요. 하지만 이제 드디어 쉴
Do
수
you
있을
know
것
what a
같아요.
name is? Is it simply a title given by your parents? Or does it hold a deeper meaning? The protagonist of today's story had to carry 7 different names. One was despair, another was liar, and yet another was a name that almost became that of a corpse. At this very moment, in an international forum lecture hall in London, hundreds of audience members are holding their breath, listening intently to one woman's story. A neat and intellectual-looking woman in her 40s, Kim Saerom, speaks in fluent English. My name is Kim Saerom, but to stand here today, I had to carry 7 different names. Not even a breath can be heard from the audience. Everyone is waiting for her next words. To find just one true name, I had to risk everything. This is not just my story. This is a story about 2 miracles I met in hell and about a ray of light that began in a stranger's pocket. Saerom's voice doesn't tremble, but the weight of past years is deeply etched around her eyes. In those eyes, an ember that never died even in darkness still lives and breathes. So then, how did she make it to this point? What is the truth hidden behind the 7 names? Let us now enter that remarkable story together. Let's turn back time to about 10 years ago. At that time, Saerom was 27 years old. It had been less than a year since she had escaped from North Korea. The bustling streets of Seoul, countless people rushing past. But among that crowd, no one was as lonely as Saerom. Outwardly, they seemed to be the same ethnicity, speaking the same language, but to her, Seoul was like a completely different planet. One day, Saerom entered a cafe for the first time. The moment she looked at the menu to order, she froze. Americano, cafe latte, cappuccino. Words like alien language that she couldn't understand at all filled the board. In North Korea, coffee was just coffee. She never dreamed there would be such complicated names. "May I take your order?" the staff member asked. Saerom stuttered. She could feel the eyes of people waiting behind her. She couldn't say anything and just left the cafe. After coming outside, breathing in the cold air, she thought to herself, "Is this freedom? Is being this lonely what freedom is?" She thought they spoke the same language, but Saerom felt like she had become mute. People spoke too fast, the intonation was unfamiliar, and she couldn't understand more than half the words they used. What was harder was people's gazes. When someone found out she was from North Korea, their attitude changed 180 degrees. Some openly ignored her, others excessively pitied her. Saerom wanted neither. She just wanted to be treated as an ordinary person. Every night, in her tiny Gosiwon room, Saerom would take out photos of the family she left behind in North Korea. In the photo, her mother was still young, and her younger brother was still a 15-year-old boy. When she escaped, she had asked them to come along, but her mother had firmly refused. "You go ahead. I can't go because of your brother. At least you must survive." That's what her mother had said. Thinking back now, her mother wanted to save at least one daughter. Rather than all 3 being caught while escaping together, she wished for at least one to survive. But Saerom blamed herself every night. "What's the use of only me surviving? If I can't share this freedom with my family, what meaning does it have?" She tried hard to adapt to life in Korea. During the day, she washed dishes at a restaurant, and at night she worked the night shift at a convenience store. During breaks, she watched Korean dramas and mimicked the intonation and read newspapers, writing down words she didn't know in a notebook. 6 months passed that way. Saerom had adapted to Korean life to some extent. Now she could order coffee at a cafe and could skillfully take buses and subways. But the emptiness in her heart remained unfilled. One spring evening, Saerom was walking in Han River Park. Families were laughing and eating chicken. Couples walked hand in hand. Friends rode bicycles joyfully. Watching all those scenes, Saerom shed tears. She wanted to show this beautiful scenery, this peaceful moment, to her family too, to her mother, to her brother. She wanted them to breathe this air of freedom together. That very night, Saerom made a decision. "I'll go back. I'll return to that darkness I escaped from. And this time, I'll bring my family out." It was crazy. Going back to the hell she had risked her life to escape from was truly insane. But Saerom had already made up her mind. Freedom was too lonely to enjoy alone. She immediately began searching for a broker. and she handed over all the money she had saved for a year to the broker. The broker smiled meaningfully and said, "You've made a big decision. But miss, are you prepared? Once you start this, there's no turning back. If you're caught, both you and your family are finished." Saerom nodded. "I'm prepared. Please begin." And so, her second escape, no, her family rescue operation, began. 3 months later, Saerom arrived at a small village on the Chinese border. At 11 p.m., in pitch-black darkness, she stood by the riverside. Her heart felt like it would burst. It was the moment when she would meet her family after 10 years. A faint light flickered from across the river. It was a signal. Saerom also flashed her flashlight and waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Time passed so slowly. Finally, 2 shadows appeared in the darkness. It was her mother and brother. Her mother's face, seen after 10 years, was deeply lined with the years. Half her hair had turned white and her back was bent. Her brother was now 25. The last time she saw him, he was a cute boy. But now he had become a young man. Saerom wanted to run and embrace her mother. She wanted to hold her mother, whom she had missed for 10 years, and cry her heart out. But she couldn't. The broker urgently rushed them. "No time for sentimentality. We need to leave right now," the broker said. When she heard why they were in such a hurry, Saerom felt despair. Of all days, it happened to be China's National Day. While all of China was in a festive mood, ironically, border security had been strengthened 3 times the normal level. "If we cross the border today, there's a 90% chance of getting caught, but the plan has already started, and tomorrow will be more dangerous. If not now, there's no chance." At the broker's words, Saerom gritted her teeth. Having come this far, she couldn't back down. "All right, let's go." And so, the 4 of them began moving under cover of darkness. The destination was Shenyang. From Shenyang to Beijing, Beijing to Kunming, Kunming to the Laos border, and crossing from Laos to Thailand, they could reach the Korean embassy. That was the plan. But how many things in the world go according to plan? The first checkpoint was a bus to Shenyang departing at 5 a.m. It was a double-decker bus, and the broker deliberately booked the back seats on the second floor to be less visible to people. The bus departed. Saerom looked out the window. North Korean land could be seen in the distance. Thinking this might be the last time she saw her homeland, she captured that scenery with her camera. Her mother held her daughter's hand tightly. She shed tears without words. What must have been in the mother's heart as she began a journey crossing the boundary between life and death with the daughter she met after 10 years? Her brother looked out the window with a tense face. The broker sat separately in the front of the bus, keeping watch. The bus ran quietly. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Nothing happened. Saerom slowly began to relax. Maybe it can go smoothly like this. But before that thought could even finish, the bus suddenly stopped. The bus door opened, and a soldier carrying a gun got on. It was a special National Day inspection. Saerom's heart felt like it stopped. Her mother gripped her daughter's hand even tighter. Her brother lowered his head and hid his face. The soldier slowly looked around inside the bus. His gaze was sharp. It was a look searching for anyone suspicious. And there was a place where that gaze stopped. It was Saerom's brother. He was the only young man on the bus, a 25-year-old youth, exactly military service age. The soldier slowly began climbing to the second floor. With each step up, 1, 2, 3, Saerom's heart beat faster. The soldier completely climbed to the second floor and walked toward her brother. 3 meters, 2 meters, 1 meter. Just a few more steps and he would be right in front of her brother. At that very moment, Saerom jumped up and rushed forward in front of the soldier. It was such a sudden action that even the soldier stopped in surprise. Saerom held up her camera and thrust it right in the soldier's face and shouted in clumsy Chinese, "Wow, really cool. You're really handsome. Can I take a picture?" The soldier was flustered. He had come to inspect, and suddenly a woman wanting to take pictures appeared. What? No pictures. It's illegal. Delete it right now." The soldier got angry, but Saerom acted even more excited. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'm a tourist, so I didn't know. I didn't know Chinese soldiers were this handsome." She deliberately stumbled through her Chinese exaggeratedly and pressed various camera buttons, acting as if she didn't know how to delete photos. The soldier got increasingly annoyed, but at the same time, this woman began to seem like a simple, foolish tourist. The soldier snatched the camera from Saerom and checked the photo. There really was a picture of the soldier's face. "Delete it right now." The soldier shouted again. Saerom pretended to be scared and deleted the photo, and continued apologizing. "I'm really sorry. I didn't know. I won't do it again." The soldier finally sighed and returned the camera, and got off the bus without looking at her brother anymore. The bus door closed, and the bus started moving again. Only then could Saerom sit back down. Cold sweat poured from her entire body. Her hands trembled. Her mother patted her daughter's back. But Saerom thought to herself, "Being a crazy tourist is better than being caught as a North Korean defector. I can be a fool, as much as it takes to protect my family." The bus continued on. They had passed the first crisis, but the real hell was just beginning. It took 7 hours to reach Shenyang. During those 7 hours, Saerom's family didn't say a single word, or more precisely, they couldn't. There were dozens of Chinese people on the bus, and they could all hear any conversation Saerom's family had. Her mother had so much she wanted to ask her daughter, how she had lived for 10 years, whether it was hard, whether Seoul was really a good place, but she couldn't say a single word. Her brother was the same. He missed his sister so much and had mountains of questions, but he had to keep his mouth tightly shut. Watching her family like this, Saerom felt her heart tearing. This situation where they met after 10 years but couldn't have a proper conversation was so cruel. But they had to endure. If even one word of North Korean dialect leaked out, that would be the end. They arrived in Shenyang. The broker led them to a small inn. The moment the door closed, Saerom tightly embraced her mother and cried loudly. Her mother also held her daughter and cried. Her brother also cried with them. The three of them cried for a long time. The longing they had held back for 10 years burst out. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for leaving you and going alone," Saerom said through tears. Her mother stroked her daughter's head and said, "There's nothing to be sorry about. That you're alive is enough for me." But the rest time given to them was only 3 hours. The broker knocked on the door again. "Wake up. It's time for the bus to Beijing." It took 12 hours to Beijing. Again, it was a long-distance bus, but this bus was more dangerous. There were several checkpoints near Beijing. It was 8 hours after the bus departed. The bus stopped again. This time it was public security officers, an existence more frightening than soldiers. The public security officers checked IDs. Saerom's family's IDs were of course forged, fake IDs prepared by the broker. They looked real on the surface, but experts could spot them. A public security officer got on the bus. Not just one, but 3. They carefully checked each person's ID one by one. Saerom's heart began pounding again as if it would burst. Her mother closed her eyes and muttered something like a prayer. Her brother's face had turned pale white. The officer came closer and closer. The front seat, the side seat, and finally it was Saerom's family's turn. "ID," the officer said expressionlessly. Saerom handed over her ID with trembling hands. The officer looked at the ID closely. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Time felt like eternity. "What's your name?" the officer asked. Saerom answered, "Li Hua." It was a fake name, Saerom's second name. The officer nodded and received the next person's ID. It was her mother's ID, also with a fake name written on it. "Li Shuxi, your age." The officer had a suspicious expression. The photo and actual face looked slightly different. Her mother had aged too much in 10 years. "When was this photo taken?" the officer asked. Her mother couldn't answer. She was so nervous that her voice wouldn't come out. "I'm asking you?" The officer's voice became sharp. At that moment, Saerom quickly answered, "My mother can't speak well. She had a stroke a few years ago." The officer looked at Saerom. It was a suspicious gaze. "Really? Then what about this person?" The officer received her brother's ID. Her brother's fake name was Kim Cholsu. The officer sharply asked her brother, "Kim Cholsu, come out." Her brother couldn't move. He was so nervous his body froze. The officer shouted again, Kim Chul-soo, can't you hear me? At that very moment, Saerom grabbed her brother's hand and stood up, and calmly said, "This person is mute. He can't speak. He's had a disability since birth." The officer narrowed his eyes. "Mute? Can you prove it?" Right then, strange sounds came from behind Saerom. Her mother was making odd sounds, mimicking a mute person. At that moment, Saerom got goosebumps all over her body. Her mother was pretending to be disabled to protect her children. The officer frowned. "What? Why are there so many mutes on this bus?" At those words, the inside of the bus became quiet for a moment. Saerom thought it was over. The officer was starting to suspect. Now it's the end. The officer asked the bus driver, "Driver, are these people really mute?" All eyes turned to the driver. The driver must have heard Saerom's family speaking in North Korean dialect for the past 8 hours. If he told the truth, Saerom's family would be arrested on the spot. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Silence flowed, and the driver opened his mouth. That's right, they're mute. At that one sentence, Saerom almost fainted. The driver had saved them. Why did he do it? Did he also know the plight of North Korean people? Or was it simply from a good heart? The reason was unknown. But what was certain was that his one sentence saved 3 people's lives. The officer no longer doubted and returned the IDs and got off the bus. The bus started moving again. Only then could Saerom breathe. Her mother's hands were still trembling. Her brother was crying with his head down. And Saerom realized the dozens of passengers on this bus must have all heard them speaking in North Korean dialect over the past hours. But not a single one of them reported to the public security officers. The silence of those people, whose names she didn't even know, saved Saerom's family. There were still good people in the world, people whose humanity came before the law. Saerom looked out the window and quietly sent gratitude to them. "Thank you. All of you whose names I don't know, your silence saved us." They safely arrived in Kunming via Beijing. Now they had left the most dangerous China. The last checkpoint was Laos. The broker said, "From here, I can't accompany you. Another broker will take your family to Laos. You should return to Seoul first." Saerom shook her head. I can't go until I confirm my family crosses safely." The broker sighed. "It's dangerous. If you get caught too, who will rescue your family?" But Saerom was stubborn. Eventually the plan changed. The family would cross the Laos border by land, and Saerom would enter Laos first by plane and wait for her family. The moment of parting came. Saerom tightly embraced her mother. "Mom, let's definitely meet in Laos. Just hold on a little longer." Her mother nodded with tears flowing. Her brother also embraced his sister. "Sister, be careful." Saerom left her family behind and headed to Kunming Airport. Her heart ached so much, but she had to endure it. They would meet soon after all. At the airport, she bought a ticket to Seoul, but before departure, she was supposed to receive contact from the broker near the Laos border. Contact that her family had safely entered Laos. Saerom sat in the airport waiting room and waited for the call. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. No contact came. The plane departure time approached, but still no contact. With an anxious heart, Saerom called the broker first. After a while, the broker answered and said in a cold voice, "Your family was caught in Laos." Saerom's mind went blank. "What did you say?" "They were caught by police while crossing the Laos border. They're now locked up in Luang Namtha immigration detention." Then what should I do?" Saerom asked urgently. But the broker's answer was cold. "There's nothing I can do. You be careful and return to Seoul." The call ended. Saerom collapsed on the spot. It felt like the sky was falling. The Seoul-bound plane ticket in her hand felt meaningless. "I persuaded my family and dragged them into this hell. I drove them to death." Guilt rushed in. Her entire body ached as if beaten with a club. Saerom tore up the plane ticket and caught a taxi. "Take me to the Laos border." The taxi driver asked in surprise. "That's 8 hours from here?" "I don't care. Please go." Saerom's voice didn't tremble. It was a desperate situation. But she couldn't give up. She had to save her family. After an 8-hour journey, Saerom arrived at the Laos border village of Luang Namtha. It was a small village. The immigration office was a shabby building. Saerom entered the immigration office. She said to the staff member at the counter, "My family is locked up here. Please let me meet them." The staff member shook his head, as if annoyed. "No, it's the rules. Please, just for a moment." Saerom pleaded, but the staff member was firm. Then another staff member approached and whispered something, and looked at Saerom again. "You have money?" Saerom realized. They wanted a bribe. She took out all the money in her pocket. "This is all I have." The staff member took the money and pointed to a door in the back. 10 minutes, just 10 minutes. Saerom went through that door. Passing through a narrow and dirty corridor, she saw iron bars. And inside, her mother and brother were there. "Mom!" Saerom shouted. Her mother raised her head. The moment she saw her daughter, her mother had an expression of disbelief. "Saerom, you, all the way here?" Her mother began crying, saying she must be seeing an apparition. Saerom grabbed the bars and shed tears. "Mom, I'll definitely save you. Just wait a little." But how could she save them? Saerom had no more money. The broker had withdrawn. She knew no one. A month passed. Saerom stayed in Luang Namtha and visited the immigration office every day. She gave bribes to have visits. Her family's condition was getting worse. Inside the prison was unsanitary and proper meals weren't provided. Saerom desperately searched for a way. She contacted the Korean embassy, but there was no Korean embassy in Laos. The nearest embassy was in Bangkok, Thailand. She also contacted international human rights organizations. But most didn't even reply. Even if they did reply, there was no practical help. After a month of effort, an immigration official finally spoke up. "I can release your family." Saerom's ears perked up. "Really? But you have to pay money. $1,200 per person. There are 5 people, so $6,000 total. $6,000, about 7 million won in Korean currency. It was an impossibly large sum for Saerom. She had already spent all the money she had saved for a year. The money she had left was only a few dozen dollars. Saerom despaired. But she couldn't give up. She went to a small cafe in the village. There, she borrowed a laptop and checked her email, hoping there might be someone who could help. But there was no one. Saerom sat in a corner of the cafe and shed tears. Is this really the end? Having come this far, must she give up like this? That's when it happened. A tall white man approached Saerom. He appeared to be in his 40s. He asked in English, "Excuse me, is something wrong? You look very troubled." Saerom barely knew English. But at this moment, she had to say something somehow. She took out an electronic dictionary from her bag. It was a time before smartphones. Pressing buttons on the electronic dictionary with her fingers, Saerom desperately searched for words. Prison. Family. 5 people. Monies. Please help. The man stared at the electronic dictionary screen and looked at Saerom's face. He saw the tears flowing from her eyes. The man stood up without saying anything and went outside the cafe. Saerom thought, as expected, it won't work. Who would help a stranger? But 5 minutes later, the man returned and put money down in front of Saerom. Is this enough? Saerom counted the money. It was exactly $6,000. This is... Saerom couldn't continue her words. She couldn't believe it. A complete stranger, a foreigner to an Asian woman he just met, had just handed over such a large amount of money. Saerom took out the electronic dictionary again and asked, "Why? Me?" The man smiled and lightly patted Saerom's shoulder and said, "I'm not helping you. I'm helping North Korean people." Hearing those words, Saerom burst into tears. Angels really existed in this world. They weren't only in movies. The man's name was Dick. He was Australian and was doing charity work in Laos. He knew stories of North Korean people and wanted to help them. Dick handed Saerom a business card. "Contact me later. Tell me if you need anything more." and he left the cafe, so naturally, as if he had done nothing special. That day, Saerom looked up at the Laos sky for the first time. The blue sky was more beautiful than ever. The next day, Saerom went to the immigration office with $6,000. When she handed over the money, the staff member released her family as promised. The prison door opened. Her mother, brother, and 2 other North Korean defectors who had been caught with them came out. It was their first sunlight in a month. Saerom tightly embraced her family. This time they had really succeeded. Now they could truly head toward freedom. They crossed from Laos to Thailand and went to the Korean embassy in Bangkok. The embassy welcomed them warmly. "You've been through a lot. Now you can go to Korea." Hearing those words, her mother collapsed on the spot and cried. The long nightmare had ended. 10 years have passed since then. Saerom lived fiercely to repay the debt she owed Dick. No, the debt wasn't something that could be repaid with money. She decided to repay it in another way. She began learning English. She studied 16 hours a day. While working at an organization helping North Korean defectors, she practiced English. After 3 years, she could speak English fluently. And she began telling her story on the international stage. At first, it was at small gatherings. She shared her experiences in front of 10, 20 people. But her story gradually spread. The media paid attention, and international human rights organizations contacted her. Saerom spoke at the UN and gave lectures at universities in various countries. And as if by fate, she appeared on Australian television. There was a surprise guest on that broadcast. It was Dick. The 2 people who met again after 10 years tightly embraced each other and cried. Dick patted Saerom's shoulder and said, "You did well. You really did well." Saerom said to him, "You changed my life. No, you changed 5 people's lives." Dick shook his head. "No, you achieved it yourself. I just gave a little help." But Saerom knew. Without that little help, there would be no her today. At this moment, at the London Lecture Hall, Saerom is concluding her story in front of hundreds of audience members. "I had 7 names. Some of those names were despair, some were liar, and some were death. But finally, I found one true name." She paused for a moment and said powerfully, "My name is Kim Saerom, and today I stand here to pass on to you the hope that Dick planted in me." Applause erupted from the audience. It was a standing ovation. Saerom continued speaking. "One person's small kindness can change one person's life, and that changed life can change the world again. I earnestly hope my story becomes a ray of light in someone's despair, that this miracle is transmitted to even just one person." The sound of applause grew louder. People were crying. They were tears of emotion. Saerom smiled brightly and bowed. "Thank you." Ladies and gentlemen, this was Kim Saerom's story. The story of a woman who discarded 7 names and found one true life. We all have our own names. In those names are contained our history, our pain, our hope. Sometimes we too must carry several names. Depending on the situation, depending on the person, we must show different aspects. But what's important is that we have a true name within us. Not losing that true name, isn't that the most precious thing we must protect? And remember this, your small kindness can change someone's life. Like Dick, like the bus driver, like the nameless passengers, you too can become someone's angel. I hope today's story becomes a small seed in your hearts. I earnestly hope that seed will someday grow into a beautiful tree. Thank you for listening.